We are products of our generation. We're products of our generation. What do I mean by that? That means that each of us is kind of molded by when we grew up. You think about that just a little bit. Every one of us probably, when we were growing up as teenagers, maybe even into our 20s and 30s, there were things that our parents and other people about their age just didn't understand or didn't agree with. Every one of us had that happen. In the 70s when I grew up, and for some of you young people, I know you think that's like ancient history, and I guess it is getting to be that way. What they didn't understand then was the long hair on guys. All right? We started growing long hair. I remember there was one lady in the church where I was growing up at the time that she would get on my brother and I because we had long hair. It wasn't that long at that time. All right? It was longer, but I mean, it was just kind of down here, you know, a little longer, a little shaggy looking perhaps. But it got a lot longer, believe me. But she talked about that. She would go to the Bible and see where it said in Timothy not to, men weren't supposed to have long hair. And so we would tell my dad that, and he said, well, just tell her that it also says in Timothy not to have braided hair. Because this lady had her hair was real long, she just had one big braid right around her head here. She never said a word about her hair ever again after that. But the thing is, you know, it's one of those things a lot of people don't understand. What are you doing? You're a hippie, you know, that type of thing, because my hair got down to my shoulders, and maybe some of you others who grew up in the 70s, you had long hair too. I think Mike Clark even had long hair back then. Did you have long hair back then? It's really hard to believe, but anyhow. He's got pictures. Oh, boy. But a lot of our likes and our dislikes are kind of formed when we were younger. And think about that, even our music that we listen to, our parents always hated our music, didn't they? Probably as we were growing up, every one of us probably, our parents hated our music. You know, even today, you know, you hear some music, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. The kids like it though. I don't like it so much, but you know, it's just interesting how our things change. And so an age difference of 30 years or more can cause us to have a completely different view on things than what somebody younger has. You know, that age range, that 30-year difference can really make a difference in how we perceive things and how we view things. It's been said that we are creatures of a particular era with limited perspective, born of limited years. Okay, let me say that again just so you get it. It's been said we are creatures of a particular era with a limited perspective, born of limited years. Okay, get the idea there? Because we are only here for so long, 70 or 80 years in this life, we're kind of limited on our perspective. And so we are just kind of creatures of that particular era that we grew up in. And we see that. I mean, even in churches, the music in churches, even, you know, we use the piano organ, but we also use some of the modern praise songs. And, you know, there's different people. Some people love the piano organ. Some people don't like it at all. You know, and it's usually more about what age you are. And not always, but it is sometimes. And so we are kind of creatures of a particular era. And we could not be more different than God in that situation, in that reason. Look at Psalm 90, verses 1 through 4. Here's what it says in Psalm 91 through 4. It says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn men back to dust, saying, return to dust, O sons of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. See what it's saying? See, God is not limited by time, because God created it. Think about that. We sometimes think of time as just being something that has always been. No. There's a beginning of time, and there's going to be an end of time. Think about it for a moment. How do we measure time? Okay? A lot of time is measured by the sun. Okay? By the sun and by the moon. You know, there are solar calendars, there are lunar calendars. We judge a day by when the sun comes up, goes down, comes back up again. There's a day. Okay? And even if we look at it, you know, well, there's atomic clocks now that keep time, I don't know, somehow atomically, I don't know how that works. All right? But through atoms, guess where atoms came from? God created them. So time is something that God has invented. It's something that God created. And so therefore God is free to act within time as he decides. Think about that. Time is almost like a place that God goes into. He can go into it and he can step out of it. You know, he can act within time as he decides, but he exists outside of it. See, God, he is the God of the past, the present, and the future. Revelation 1:8 says it this way, and this is the English Standard Version. It says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is, and who was, and who is to come, the Almighty. So God is past, present, and future. He is there always. And he's the one who determined the beginning of time. Remember Genesis 1:1, what's it say there? In the beginning. All right? There was a beginning to time. And God said, in the beginning, he created the heavens and the earth. Created time. And guess what? He also will determine when time ends. Think about it. God is never late. He's never in a hurry. He's never trying to beat a deadline. He's never trying to juggle a time schedule. How could that be any more different than us? Didn't that happen with all of us? We're running late. We're in a hurry. You know, we got to beat that deadline. We got all this time schedule trying to figure it all out so we get everything in on time. And God doesn't have to worry about any of that. Because everything to God is now. What's interesting, God has set a time for everything. Look what it says in Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. It says this, and this is a passage that's familiar to us. Probably we've all heard this at some time or another. It says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to seek and a time to lose. A time to keep and a time to cast away. A time to tear and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Time for everything. And yet, sometimes we think God's a little bit late. Okay? Or we think that we know what the appropriate times are. Sure, there's a time for everything, but we are the ones who think that we should judge when those appropriate times are. For example, a time to heal, of course, is when we're sick. You know, God should heal us when we're sick. When we want it. Right when we get sick, we want to be healed then. A time to be silent is after I've shared my opinion. And a time to die is after a full life. Not before, but after I've enjoyed this life, every bit of it that I can. Then it's time, not before. And yet, so often, these things seem to happen whenever they choose. You know, time to dance and time to mourn come at unexpected moments. Ever notice that? You know, sometimes it's just all of a sudden there will be something that just brings us unexpected joy. It just makes us want to dance. It just makes us excited and happy. But then at the same time, there are things that bring us grief, that hurt, that cause us to mourn, that just all of a sudden happen, just out of the blue, without ever expecting it. Ecclesiastes 3:11, as you go on, says this then, and this is the New Living Translation. It says, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. Isn't that interesting? He's made everything beautiful in His time, but the thing is, even though He's planted eternity in our heart, that desire to live forever, that desire to go on and on, we still can't quite comprehend it. We can't understand God's work from the beginning to the end. We can't understand how God is working everything together for our good. Sometimes we get lost in that, and we can't see it because we are so bound by time that we just cannot see it happening, or it's taking too long. You know, children, when they're learning about time, they get kind of confused. Heard about a teacher who was trying to teach her kids about the days of the week, and she said, today is Monday, yesterday was Sunday, and tomorrow is Tuesday. Well, the next day, she says, today is Tuesday. They said, what? No, today is Monday. All right? Today is Monday, they said. That's what you told us yesterday, that today is Monday. They couldn't understand that idea of today moving. Sort of like, have you ever been down by Joe's Crab Shack down in is it Bellevue or whatever? It says free crab tomorrow. Yeah. You ever seen that? You know, if you go there tomorrow, guess what? No free crab, because it's not tomorrow yet. All right? Tomorrow's tomorrow. All right? And we have a hard time sometimes understanding this whole concept of time and eternity. The kids have a problem. So we need to understand that God is already in tomorrow. Okay? For God, it's already tomorrow, but it's also yesterday for God. And it's now. Remember in the Psalms we read, that psalm we read, it said, 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by. Wow. Isn't that something? 1,000 years like a day that's just gone by. And then it's also the reverse. A day that goes by is just like 1,000 years. It's all the same. That is so hard for us to comprehend as humans because we are used to that second hand going tick, tick, tick. Especially when it's getting close to noon and the preacher's preaching. But we're used to that tick, tick, tick. But God, there is no tick, tick, tick. It's just now for Him. And so how does knowing God is eternal help us live out our faith? How does it help us live out our faith? In Ephesians 5:15 and 16, it says this, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Say it again. Making the best use of the time. He's telling us that as we go through this life, we need to make the best use of it. Because we don't know how many days we have, do we? We don't know how long we have. We want to think that we're going to live forever. We really do. I mean, don't we kind of live that way? We still think that we're going to live forever. How old am I? 58. I had to think for a second. I'm getting old enough that I forget how old I am. Maybe I just want to forget. I don't know. But I'm 58 years old. And I still feel like I got years to go. It's interesting. Now I see, people who I kind of pay more attention to obituaries and stuff. It's just kind of weird. But, when I see somebody dying at 75, I think, that's only 15 years from now. A little over 15 years. 16, 17, whatever. And I'm just like, whoa, that's coming up. And especially when I hear somebody dying at the age of 61 or 62, I'm like, whoa. It makes me think. But it doesn't matter how old we are. We don't know how long we have. We need to make the best use of the time that we have. And notice what he says, why? Because the days are evil. And we just look around and see that's true. And so how do we do that? How do we make the best use of time? A few things I think that we need to know. First, we need to let go of the past. Let go of the past. And I think there's 3 problems with holding on to the past. The first one is we get the good old days syndrome. Okay? We do that. We look back and think, I remember back in those days. I remember how it used to be. And it's always better back then. But you know what? Back then, people were saying, boy, I really wish I'd go back to back in the old days again. We keep looking at things and we dwell back there and we think that there's nothing good left. But who makes a day good? What makes something good? It's God working in our lives. And sometimes good old days weren't that good. You know, how far back do we find good? You know, I don't know about you, but I kind of like running water.
Yes.
I don't want to go way back then when they didn't have any running water. I like my bathroom and things. But the good old days. And so we need to be careful that we're not holding on to that thing. That's when everything was good. And we even see that sometimes in church where people look back in the past and see, you know, wow, I remember back when the church was doing this and that. Well, then let's change it and let's make it good again. Regret is the other problem with looking back in the past, holding on to it. Because we regret. We look back and we think about things that we didn't do that we should have. You know, how many of us have thought that before? Like, man, if I would have just done this, or if I had just done that, or accepted this job, or gone here, or whatever. We have regret. But then we also have regret because of things that we did do. The things that we said. And I bet every one of us here can remember probably one thing that we said that we wish that we could just shove back in our mouth. Something that hurt someone, something that caused a problem in a relationship that we had. And so we have those regrets. And sometimes it's things that we did. You know, the sins. And you know, Satan is good at reminding us of our sins. He's called the accuser for a reason. He wants to remind us and make us think we're not good enough for God. And so, regret. I think there's also another problem. That is sometimes we like to rest on our laurels.
What?
To rest on our laurels. Laurels. And the reason for that is because, you know, we look back and think, well, I've done my part. And I've heard people say that, you know, well, I've already done my part. It's time for somebody else to take over and do it. There may be truth to that. We do need young people come up and doing things. But that, you know what? There is no retirement in Christianity. There's no retirement. Matter of fact, if you look in the scriptures, you see a lot of older people who were doing amazing things. Moses didn't even get started until he was 80 years old. And so we need to not rest on our laurels. Not look back and think, yeah, look what I did back here. We need to keep going on. And allow God to continue to use us until our last breath. And let me tell you this. If nothing else, we can be praying. We can be prayer warriors. Maybe we can't get out. Maybe we can't do much. Maybe our body just won't let us do much. But guess what? We can always pray. And I think prayer sometimes gets a bad rap. We think we're not doing anything. But prayer is powerful and it's effective. And so we need to be doing at least that, if nothing else. So we need to let go of the past, but we also need to let go of the future. You know, sometimes we wait for that next stage of life. You know, we're always waiting for it. Sometimes because, you know, we can't wait to get out of school. All right? Oh, I'm in school. I just can't. Oh, I hate this. I want to get out of here. I just can't wait to get past it. Or, I think, you know, people, I can't wait until the kids are gone. All right? Because, you know, I just need some more time to myself. Especially, I think, young mothers feel that way sometimes. You know, I just can't wait till they get in school or whatever. And so we kind of wish our life away. We don't take advantage of what's going on in the day. And we kind of wait for the next stage of life. But I think also when we wait for that next stage of life, we can also do that with our serving God. You know, once I get out of school, then I'll be able to really serve God. Once I get retired, I can really serve God. Once I don't have any more kids in the house, I can really serve God. We come up with things why we can do it later on. But also we need to let go of the future because sometimes we just dread what might come. Remember what Jesus said? He said, don't worry. In other words, he says, don't be thinking about all the things that might happen. And it's interesting, some people spend so much time worrying about things that might happen, but they miss so many things that are happening right now. The good things. And guess what? Most of those things that we worry about that are going to happen, never happen. They don't. We can really start figuring out all these different things that might go wrong, and most of the time they don't happen. And so we're just wasting time. So we need to let go of the future and let God take care of that for us. And then the last thing I think that we can do to to make the best use of our time is to live today fully. To live today fully. Now, I think people fall in two categories sometimes in this, and there's probably a middle there, ground there, which I hope that there is. But sometimes lazy, all right? Some people are just lazy. You know, they think that there'll always be more time. You know, I don't need to do that now because there'll be more time later down the road. I can do that later down the road. And guess what they find out? There isn't any more time. But then there are those who are busy. They never have enough time. You know, they're busy, boom, 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 boom. Every step of their day is scheduled. You know, they got it down to the minute. I've even seen, you know, what do they call them, calendars or whatever, that are to the minute. You know, I'm thinking, to the minute? You know, this is crazy. But, you know, there are those who are lazy, always be more time. There are those who are busy, there's never enough time. But we need to use the time that God has given us wisely. We need to be productive. We need to do things that are productive. But we also need to take time to smell the roses. We need to take time to just enjoy life as well. We weren't meant to run ourselves ragged. Matter of fact, why did God give man the Sabbath? To cause him to rest. Because he knows that some of us will just work ourselves. He said you need to take some time off. So he wants us to enjoy life and not just be busy all the time. But he also wants us to accomplish something, to do something. And so don't let today cause you regrets in the future for what you did or didn't do in the past. Get that? Don't let today cause you regrets in the future for what you did or didn't do in the past. In other words, today. Let's do what we need to do. Psalms 90:12 says, "So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom." We don't have endless days in this life. And none of us knows exactly how many we have. But we know that they're few compared to eternity. Remember Etha Power? Maybe you remember Etha. One time when she was in the hospital, she asked me why she was still here. She was up there in age, and she asked why she was still here, and her son wasn't. He died at a young age. And you know, I didn't have an answer for her. I didn't know really what to tell her. But I do know that God does make all things beautiful in their time. And that time may be when time is no more. When time is no more for us. And the eternal God brings us to eternity with Him. So, make the most of your days by living through faith in Jesus Christ. Letting go of the past, letting go of the future, and living today fully for Him. Just a moment, we're going to sing our song, Commitment. And the song that we're using is I Surrender All, because that's really where it starts at, surrendering all to God. And that includes our time. To surrender our time to Him. Every moment that we live, we should be surrendering to Him. Now, does that mean we have to be busy? No, because He wants us to rest some. He wants us to enjoy life. But we need to find what He wants us to do. We need to be asking Him, you know, what can I do to serve You today? What do You want me to do? How can I make the best use of my time for You? And so we need to surrender that to Him. So let's stand and let's sing I Surrender All. If you haven't given your life to Him, you're not even going to understand about eternity. You're not going to get to experience that eternity until you give your life to Jesus Christ.